and Washington, D.C., where he worked at the Pentagon. He's been deployed to Saudi Arabia and Iraq. He's married to my Aunt Kristen, and they have 3 boys. Oh, and he's also my dad's twin brother. Please give an OHS welcome to my Uncle Mark Weber.
One sheet of paper, nothing to be afraid of. Thank you, Caitlin. I gotta start out by telling a joke, because we gotta break the ice. Because we can't have 10 minutes of me talking and you guys looking at me like, what's he gonna say next? Alright, so I actually heard that this isn't a joke, I mean it actually happened. I heard that it happened at the stop sign right down here by the Dairy Queen. Right where you come across the bridge. Guy pulled through a stop sign and the cop pulled him over and said, I need to see your license and registration. The guy behind the wheel says, well, what am I being pulled over for? He said, well, you went through the stop sign back there. He said, no, I didn't. I came to a stop. The cop says, well, you rolled through the stop sign. And, that's not good enough. The guy behind the wheel says, well, I came to a stop and then I went through, and he said the cop says the law says you need to come to a full complete stop, look in all directions, and then proceed with caution through the intersection. You didn't do that. Guy behind the wheel says, you got some nerves. Is the donut shop closed today? Just looking for busy work? And the cop says, look, if you could just give me your license and registration, you didn't stop. You slowed down, but you didn't stop. And the guy behind the wheel says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you my license and registration when you can tell me the difference. Cop grabs him out of the car, starts beating on him with his nightstick, beating the crap out of him. Guy on the ground's going, what are you doing? He goes, well, do you want me to slow down or do you want me to stop? So how many of you guys roll through that stop sign over by the Dairy Queen? Two honest people out of all of you. And you're now marked. Okay, so you got a little introduction to who I am. You see me up here in my army monkey suit. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about life today, a little bit about death. How many of you are familiar with my background? Like, why I'm coming to speak to you guys today? Just a general idea. Alright, just a handful. Okay, so we're going to touch a lot of ground. And I'm going to go through some introductions of Buford. Buford's my buddy. Alright? For those of you who don't know, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. That's actually what I still have. About 2 years ago, I was getting ready for a deployment to Afghanistan. And I decided that I wanted to go get a little bit more checked out, health-wise. I had already been cleared to deploy, and I had some problems I won't get into, but I decided that I wanted to go get checked out a little bit more. And long story short, within 2 weeks, doctors told me that I had stage 4 cancer all over my liver, the part where the stomach connects to the intestine, completely indistinguishable from the tissue that was around it. I was essentially given, at that point, after the surgery, given 6 months to live. 2 years, I'm still here. And so, I'll be talking a lot about what I've done and some of the experiences I've had. But what I want to try and do is make this relevant to you all. That there is a big, big so what to my story and how it relates to you guys. So that's my goal today. This isn't just about Mark Weber's story in the Army and dealing with cancer. I hope to be able to explain to you or show you or reveal to you what you all have. So first of all, I personified my cancer. I gave him a name, Buford. And so are there some squeamish people in here? Any squeamish people? Okay. So the pictures that I'm going to go through are going to be a little squeamish. All right, so you might want to just partially shield your eyes and just be ready to go. Oh my God. All right. So if you give me the first slide. Yeah, just cartoons to start. I'm going to ease you into the water. We're going to start at the shallow end, okay? And by the way, it's okay to laugh. I want to tell you that right now. It is okay to laugh with me. Please do. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is a bit tragic. It sounds sad. Might even make some of you cry. Makes me cry sometimes. But it's okay. It's okay to do both, so I'll tell you that. So the cartoons to start with. This is what your stomach looks like. And it comes down into the intestine, and it works its way down to the exit ramp. Presuming you all know what the exit ramp is. So the gray area that you see with the dotted lines, can you guys see that? See the dotted lines here? All this gray area in the middle is what they cut out of me. Okay, so go to the next slide. This is what my redesigned anatomy looks like. Now, don't ask me how this works, but it still works. They reconnect the stomach. Remember how it was all nice and neat before? It looks like a bit like Frankenstein. You know, they take the stomach and they connect it back to the intestine. They pull a whole loop of intestine up to start with. And they reconnect the stomach. And you can see that the intestine is just kind of sewed together at the end there. Then they reconnect the pancreas. That's what that is. And then they reconnect the bile duct, and you notice the gallbladder's gone. And then for me, the one thing that this doesn't show is what they also did to me is they cut out 60% of my liver. The liver is the largest organ that you have in your body. It actually starts over here and it works its way over to the other side. There's two lobes. It's one organ, but they cut out 60% of that. Okay? So here comes the squeamish part. This is a little forewarning. Next slide. Alright. That's a little jarring for me, for even me to look at. That was 2 years ago. And you can see the cut mark goes all the way across to the other side of my body. The reason that I look like a cut open deer carcass there is when the bile duct isn't connected back to the intestine nice and tight. Do you guys know what bile and pancreatic juice does? Anyone know? What does it do? I heard a sizzle sound down here. It eats stuff. It digests the food you put in your body. It's great inside the intestine. When it's outside the intestine, it doesn't know the difference between your abdominal muscle and a steak. It just eats. And so that's what happened. I had a hole in where they reconnected the stuff in the slide that I showed you before. A hole developed there, and so bile and pancreatic juice was flowing out of that hole, and it filled my entire abdominal cavity. And so the only way they could get that out was to open me up like that. And this was maybe 2 weeks after the surgery. And then a couple of days later, they opened up the other side. Now, I didn't know you could live like this, because they didn't sew this back together. When they did this and they opened me up, I had a good cry. Now, I've been to combat. I've been in the Army for 23 years. I've seen a lot of things. I've been to a lot of places. And this broke me down pretty harsh. To look down and see yourself open like that, I don't know if you can tell, but I can pretty much put my fist inside my body. And I said, so, hey Doc, when are we going to sew this back together? We're not sewing it back together. This is how it's going to heal. I'm like, there's no way it's going to heal. This is your body, by the way. This isn't some special Captain America soldier body. This is what you guys are all equipped with, FYI. Alright? So this is what your body is capable of doing. So they cut me open. A couple days later, they opened up the other side. And what I would do every day, several times a day, is pack that with gauze and bandages, and then we would change it out 3-4 times a day. I was on a drug that made me high 24/7. Believe me, the novelty of being high wears off after about day 2. I don't, stop the ride. I want to get off. Alright, and you see down here at the bottom, there's a tube that goes into my side. And that tube goes all the way up into here, and it coils up, and and it's meant to drain out that fluid. But it was coming out everywhere. The fluid was flowing out of me everywhere. I had weighed 165 pounds. Within a month, I weighed 130 pounds. So I'd lost 35 pounds. Right now I weigh 145 pounds. So next slide. That is what your body's capable of doing. That big hole, go back to the previous slide. That, go to the following slide, turned into that. On its own. No stitches, just closed up. Isn't that amazing? That is what your body is capable of doing. That's what my body did. Well, it didn't kill me, so that's what it did. And then you see that little tube down there at the bottom, and that continued to drain fluid. So I like to call these pictures the good old days. The good old days. This was back 2 years ago. Because it's actually, you think it can, how many of you think it can't get worse than what you just saw? Yeah, it can get worse actually, I found out. It can get worse. So next slide. This is what I affectionately refer to as the bullet hole. Because it kind of looks like a bullet hole. That hole is right here. It's still there. And if you can kind of see down at the bottom, that's my intestine. Right there at the bottom, that little shiny thing. And there's some yellow stuff. And then you see the next layer in between, that's muscle. And then the outside layer, of course, is the skin. And so that's about the size of your thumb. And that hole has been there because the intestine won't heal. It won't heal shut. So I have that right now. I have a tube. I actually had a tube in there last night. It was bothering me so much I just pulled it out. A little bit of blood. It's all good. Here I am, right?
It's all good.
So, yeah, digestive juices versus flesh, this is what you get. So for 2 years I've had this hole like this. Okay, next slide. Alright, and so when it started to happen was that hole got bigger inside and food started coming out. Yeah, every day I would eat and then there'd be a little bit of food that would come out. And so, not good. So they had to put me on a feeding tube. And that's what this is. And you see all the tubes, they're trying to get this stuff under control. And you see all the yellow stuff, that's bile and pancreatic juice. So this is a year later. This is me in the hospital. And by the way, I was still working full-time for the Army. I'm still in the Army, by the way. Cool? Yeah. I think they're just keeping me around for interest at this point. I mean, let's just see what he does. Next slide. And that is my feeding tube. No food. No table food for 4 months. Just think about that for a second. No food. Nothing in here. Alright, just pump it into the machine and have fun with it. Alright, I'd have my little brother Charlie, class of 2000 by the way. His 2 kids, I'd have fun showing them how to fill up my feed bag. Put the feeding machine over my shoulder and I'd go off to work. So I'd have a bag. You see the bile draining out of the bullet hole. That's the bullet hole right there. Right? There's a lot of holes, so I got to continue to identify them. So this is the bullet hole, and it drains into a bag. And then this is a tube that they installed after about 5 or 6 months. It goes through my liver. I still have it. It goes through my liver and connects my liver to my body. If that didn't happen, then I would die. So I'm like modern day Iron Man. I'm just not all the way there yet. I don't have that little blue thing in the middle. I have a blue uniform, but I don't have all that power stuff. So yeah, this is essentially what keeps me together. And then I would go to work every day like this, and I'll talk a little bit about that because I know some of you are saying that's crazy, right? How many of you think that's crazy? Sweet. That's the kind of encouragement I need. Next slide. Alright, so I know, isn't that nummy? tube was. It looks worse than it is, I swear. All right, and then you can see the bullet hole, and that's kind of its current configuration, what I have right now. And then I still have that tube that goes through my liver. And a lot of people ask me, what does that feel like? Well, I don't know, imagine, you guys know what an ice pick looks like? Right, a long, thin metal pole. Just stick that in your side and leave it there for the rest of your life. That's what it feels like. And believe it or not, you do get used to it. You get used to it. Either that or I'm like my dad, I'm thick-headed.
Wait a minute.
Hey, it's genetic. You get dragged into it. Okay, next slide. And then this is what the inside of my liver looks like, because I wanted to give you a picture of what Buford looks like from the inside. So this is you looking at me laying down from my feet up to my head. So you're looking at me laying down, looking up into my body. And that dark spot that you see up there on the right, that's where the other half of my liver should be. So there's nothing there, it doesn't grow back. But the other half of my liver is what you see in blue. And these are two different shots. So one is at the lower end of the liver, so down here, a slice down here. And then the other one is from the upper half of the liver, so up here. And you can see how big that tumor is. And there's, all told, there are 15 tumors inside of me right now. It's cancer. And I know that it's kind of hard to believe. This is kind of why I'm here to speak to you. All right? Yeah, and I'm going to get into that a little bit. But this is cancer, what it looks like. And it's inoperable. They can't take it out of me. You are looking at a dead man walking. That's the harsh reality. Next slide. That's Buford. So now what I'd like to do is set Buford in the back row and tell him to shut up. And then I just get to talk to you guys. What I want to offer is just a couple of things that I would just like to give you to chew on. And by the way, I'm a two-way conversation type person. So I'm telling you right now, I'm going to ask you guys for questions. And I expect you guys to ask questions. And I'll tell you, I want to give you this to chew on now. There are no limits. You can ask me anything you want. Absolutely anything. Okay? I can't get more descriptive than that. You're not going to ask me something that's too sensitive. You might get me to cry. I'll admit that now. So if you want to see a soldier cry, go ahead. I'm not afraid to do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But we'll talk a little. I'll give you guys some things to chew on. And then after that, I want to ask questions and get you guys to ask me what you really want to know about. That sound like a deal? In the Army, I say hooah, and then you guys say hooah back. Alright, so we got to do a little bit of Army. I am in the Army, and I'm sorry I speak Army, so I'm going to teach you guys how to speak Army. Hooah? Hooah! That was pretty weak. That was actually pretty weak. I mean, guys, come on. Hooah? Hooah! Alright, now we're talking. Okay, so, like, the number one question that I get asked is, how do you do it? How do you get through every day? How do you wake up in the morning? Why do you continue to put on the uniform? And what I will tell you is that Buford, what you saw up here is Buford. You all, every single one of you has a Buford in your life. Maybe a couple of them. Now my Buford happens to be about 6'9", 900 pounds. Alright? But the size of Buford and how much he weighs and how bad he is, it doesn't change. Depending on whether it's cancer or whatever you have, whatever you're facing in your life. So for you high schoolers, one of you got a zit this morning. Buford. Yeah, I know, I was there, I remember. And so that's number one. So I want you to think about your own Buford and how you get past your own Bufords. How do you deal with your own Buford? And so for me, it's four things. Four things. Perspective, perseverance, personal courage, and an occasional middle finger. All right? And I'm going to talk, now the last one is not just an open forum to give everybody the middle finger. That's not what I mean. So I'll talk a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those, okay? So perspective. Perspective is all about getting into somebody else's shoes. What I have just given you is a perspective. All right? I've shown you pictures, and I'm letting you step into my life now. I'm showing you a perspective. And hopefully through some of your questions, I'll get your perspective. But it's putting yourself in other people's shoes. So through perspective, somebody always has it worse than you. Have you guys noticed that? If you haven't noticed that somebody else has it worse than you, then you're walking through life with blinders on. And I'll give you two examples I like to share all the time. The first time I got this question and I talked about perspective, and people ask me, well, how can you have such a positive attitude? How do you keep going? Is it denial? No, trust me. I know the ship's going down and I'm going to die. All right, I know that. So it's not positive thinking. The two stories that I like to share, because when the question was asked, it was Thanksgiving. That's when the question was asked to me. And I said, I opened the newspaper up from that day. And this was less than a half mile from where I live. A little girl, 11-year-old girl, she burned her neck with a curling iron. 2 days later, the day before Thanksgiving, she died. She contracted strep A. Dead. No goodbyes. Parents didn't get to say goodbye. So I'm blessed. This is a blessing. 2 years I've been here. 2 years. 18 months past the you're not going to survive. Is that positive thinking or is it perspective? I think it's perspective. Same day before Thanksgiving, guy was driving his car down Highway 3, half mile from my house. Deer stepped out in front of the road. Went through the driver's side window, killed him instantly. 2 stories, same day, within a half mile of my house. So if you want perspective, all you got to do is open up the newspaper, turn on the TV. There's perspective all around you. Just open up your eyes. And then you'll realize that somebody has it a lot worse than you do. Now that doesn't change anything about your circumstances or your conditions, but it sure has you looking at life differently if you get a hold of perspective. Alright? And that's the difference between denial and just kind of accepting what's going on in your life. So that's number 1, perspective, with dealing with your Buford. Okay? Cool? Alright, still got you. To gain perspective, I said I think you only need to look within Osceola, but look outside Osceola. Anytime I get a chance to talk to a group of high school kids, I tell them that, they ask me I get questions for advice, what would you do? And I say, well, the first thing you do, I think, is as soon as you can, leave Osceola. Not permanently, but just get outside Osceola. I say it to everybody, it's not Osceola. If I was in St. Paul, I'd say leave St. Paul. Alright? But get outside of your comfort zone. Alright? If you're a Christian, take a look at what the Muslims do. Yeah, that would make a couple of you shudder. It's not funny. But I mean it very sincerely. Step outside of your comfort zone. Look at life differently. Be willing to do that. Because you will gain a different perspective about your own situation, about your own beliefs, about your own understanding of the world. Right? This is one of my favorites. Okay, so last thing on perspective is give yourself something else to cry about. So I like telling the story here and now because my dad's part of it.
Oh boy.
So when I was 12 years old, I remember I stubbed my toe really bad on like one of those immovable objects. We're talking like a block of cement. Okay? It didn't move. Not even a block. We're talking like steps that are made out of cement. And it was bleeding. Alright? And I was crying and carrying on, even more dramatic than it would otherwise hurt an adult. And my dad came up to me so loving. Sat next to me. What's going on? What's wrong? He said, I stubbed my toe. And he said, okay. And all of a sudden, he reached back and he slammed me, punched me as hard as he could in the leg. I was like, oh, what'd you do that for? And he said, well, how's your toe feel? And I did laugh. After a while, I laughed about it. I still laugh about it. And, for a guy who never went to college, this guy knows an awful lot about how the world turns. And there's actually a psychological condition. I mean, when you hurt your hand, what do? You reach up and grab it, right? Squeeze it really hard, like that's going to fix it, right? But you're applying pressure, and you're giving your body something else to feel. And I won't get into a long diatribe about what that actually means, but give yourself something else to cry about. Physically, we're talking about a physical thing that you can do, but also emotionally. And I told you about opening up the newspaper or looking halfway across the globe, whatever. Just gain a different perspective, and you'll find it a lot easier to deal with your Bufords. What? See, you guys are got it down. All right, so that's perspective. Perseverance. What is perseverance? Anyone? That's good. All right, I like that. He gave the answer, but you yelled it out. All right, never give up, never surrender. You just keep on going. And it's another thing my dad likes to joke. It's what people with thick heads do. You just keep bashing your head against the wall. Well, no, that's not exactly what it is, and that's not exactly what he means. Perseverance is about no matter what's in front of you, you keep trying, and you never stop trying, ever. I've heard people tell me, well, you have a choice. I mean, we see so many people who quit, who get that kind of news, and they just hang it up. I'm done with life. I don't want to deal with it anymore. I think that you all are capable of doing much more than that. We all are. And it starts with, you can't start with cancer. All right, what would I do? How would I persevere? How would I deal with cancer? I don't think you can start with an example that big. I think where it starts is right now, right here, at your age, even years before. But how many of you have had a bad day so far this year? A really bad day? Yeah. I'll share a little story with you. And I put this in the book that I just wrote, so I'll share it with you. When I was in high school, this was an all-boys Catholic high school. My freshman year, 2 months into the year, we had, I just kind of cut to the chase, we had a shower after our gym class, and we were all standing there getting dressed in our lockers, and some chump 3 doors down from me said, hey, anybody notice that Weber popped a Woody in the shower? Yeah. 3 years I had to put up with that from people. I can laugh about it now, but let me tell you, I wanted to kill myself as a freshman. Perseverance is about no matter what you face every single day, you keep going at it. And not the same thing. You may try the same thing once, twice, but then you're just being hard-headed if you go at it in the same place. You got to go around it, go under it, go over it, run at it faster, run at it slower. Maybe sit down and think about it for a little bit. And I can tell you that I tried all of those things with having the problem in the shower, which did not happen, by the way. All right? Just for the record. I tried all of those things, and none of it worked. So you're like, well, where's the good news story there? So much for perseverance, right? Nothing worked. Nothing. And I won't go through all the things that I tried to do, but just trust me when I tell you that if there was a way to deal with it, I tried to deal with it that way, and it did not work. So what did I get out of it? I think I became a stronger person because of it. You just never quit. Because eventually school was over with, and I got to leave. right? So the conditions changed. So just something to chew on. And by the way, all of these things, again, I want to repeat, is just a perspective. Just one person's perspective. I'm not trying, in any of the things that I have to talk to you about today, none of them are, here's how I think you should deal with it, or here's how I think you should not deal with it. I am just giving you a perspective. Something to chew on. And I'm telling you, if there's anything that I'm telling you in this, it's to chew on it. Whoa. Whoa. I think you guys like the whoa better than anything else here. So, perseverance, I think, is a lot about doing the little things. It's always the little things. Throughout life, I think as you get older, you'll be looking for those books that have the top 10 things, top 10 leadership lessons. I'm going to get that book. And you read that book and you realize that there's a lot more than just top 10 leadership lessons. See, like this guy down here, he's taking a nap on me. Am I that boring? Who said yes? Somebody said yes. You would say that to a person with cancer? How could you? I'm an emotional person right now. And you're telling me I'm boring? See, it starts with the little things. That's my point. That's the reason that I had that. Because one little comment can change things for you. And I honestly don't care. Maybe I am boring. And sometimes I've been in things where I've fallen asleep, so I won't be no hypocrite. Go ahead, please. Don't let me disturb you. But it's all through my life, I'll just tell you in summary, it is the little things that get you to where you want to go. It's not the top 10 things. It's the saying, please and thank you. How many of you do that? Yeah. Don't stop doing it. You're never more grounded, I think, in life than you are right now as high school students. Never more grounded in life than you are right now. Don't stop doing the little things. What I've seen in my life, I'm now 41 years old, is, when I worked at the Pentagon, an absolute rat trap. 30,000 people coming and going, nonstop, all day. Just busy little bees coming in and out of the hive. And I remember one day I was working on a $25 million contract. And I called the person who was working the contract, and I said, I just want to thank you for all your help. I mean, you've just been absolutely amazing. I don't think I could have done this without you. She was floored. This woman was absolutely floored. And she told me, she went into a long explanation of how appreciative she was, and I said, well, hasn't anyone ever said thank you to you before? No. No one ever says thank you. It's my job, so they just expect me to do my job. A technique, I guess, I'll tell you, it's one of those little things that makes all the difference in the world. Because then later on, a couple months later, when it was time for me to work on another contract, guess who was standing at the door ready to help me? Set all the other things aside and took on my contract. That little old lady. And she worked for me like you wouldn't believe it. That was what a thank you did. And it's obviously a lot more than please and thank you. When you're talking with somebody, especially in today's day and age, you guys, all you young boys and girls right now, how many of you can set down your gadget that you've got in your hand? Just unplug and set it down and have a conversation with a person without looking at it. No, I don't want to see your hands. You're all liars. Liars. Especially you. I don't know what it is. You just got that guilty look. You're going to have a good question for me later, aren't you? No, but I mean unplug and truly talk to a person. When one of your friends helps you get an A on your test that you have, your big test, do you have the ability to look at that person and say, you know what, I got this A in large part because of your help. I mean, I had to go take a test, but I got the A because of your help. Are you able to do that? Because today, that's what it's just a simple acknowledgement to your buddy. But tomorrow, when you're out in the workforce, and it's kill or be killed, do you have the courage to look to the person who has helped you get to where you are and say, you're responsible for this, in large part? Just something to think about, okay? Those are the little things. And they're much harder to to do than they are to say. Okay? Hua? I know you're all going to remember hua for sure. All right, so that's perseverance. Personal courage. The one story that I wanted to share with you about personal courage is a lot of people think that dealing with a Buford like cancer or these holes or these tubes and all this other stuff, it means not being afraid. Or having to go through that surgery that I told you about. It means not being afraid. And I'm telling you, especially you guys at this age, that I think in today's society we have a bit of a warped understanding of what strength is and what courage is. Many people will look at me in this uniform and they'll see what I've done, and if they ever heard that I would break down and cry. I mean, if they saw it, they might be in a state of disbelief. And yet I'm telling you that I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everyone else. And I don't like being put up on that pedestal. You know, you're such a hero, or I can't believe what you were able to do. I think every one of you in this room right now is capable of doing the things that I've done. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the middle finger. But personal courage is, I like to use my wife as an example. So for 16 years, my wife did not like the Army. From day one, she did not like the Army. It was the biggest thing that we fought about. And so 16 years of moving around the country, 4 different moves, packing up the kids, packing up the house, and moving across the country. And we get home to Minnesota, we get settled into an assignment, and she finds out that her husband has cancer. And we have 3 young children. And then she finds out a year later that her mom has brain cancer. And oh, by the way, I didn't say this before, but the reason we came to Minnesota was her dad has cancer. So both her parents and her husband have cancer. And her dad, the first one who got cancer, is actually doing the best out of all three of them. The reason I give you that backdrop with Kristen, my wife, is because she often says how weak she is, or how weak she feels. And she breaks down and she cries a lot, and she has hard days. Every day is a wrestling match. And yet, I tell her and I tell everybody that what she is able to do is actually the example of strength and courage. And there are some people who give me like, what? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. No, because if your definition of strength and courage is somebody who can stand up strong in the wind and never breaks, and never cries, and never gets angry, if that's your definition of strength and courage, then you've got the wrong definition. But if you understood that strength is about getting the things done that need to be done, regardless of how you feel, then you'd start looking at life differently. So she has never once fallen on being able to take care of our 3 boys, never once fallen behind on taking care of me or our house or her job. She's able to get everything done, despite the fact that she feels incredibly weak, that she cries a lot. It's the example of strength. And so I really do hope you guys walk away with a different definition of strength today. And that it's okay to cry, but there's a time to cry. And it's okay to laugh, but there are times to laugh. Anybody been around when that joke is placed at just the wrong moment? It doesn't quite make sense where it's at. Right? Yeah? So, what I call those moments for my boys, when I had to tell them about the cancer, was I call them take it E moments. And so I'll share that with you. When I was a young soldier, we'd be out on patrol in the woods, and we're talking over 72 hours. So 3 days of exercises where we don't sleep. And we're walking on patrol, 8 of us. If somebody on the team gets tired, we stop the patrol, and everybody takes an E. Right? We pull out our water, we take out our food, we might even take a seat. But we don't stay there. First of all, your knees get sore. You can't stay there. You have to get up and move. And we know that. I mean, I can explain this to you, and even though none of you have been in the Army, you all can appreciate the fact that you can't stay in that spot. You have to get up and you have to move. There's a mission to get done, and that mission's different for every single one of you. But take the knee, have your cry, get mad, punch the pillow, and then get up on your feet and move up. Perseverance. Alright? And then the last thing I want to get you to chew on is the middle finger. And the middle finger is like one of my favorites. It was not my favorite. It was not my parents' favorite when I was growing up. I know that. I didn't give them the middle finger. So you're supposed to laugh. You just made the list. Yep. So the middle finger is not about breaking the rules. Alright? It's not about going, you know what, stop sign? The middle finger is about doing the things that other people say that you can't. And so what I want to leave you with on the middle finger is the word can't. When you hear the word can't, like people tell me all the time, I could never do what you've done. I could never do what you've done in the Army. I could never do what you've done with cancer. I can't do it. I could never do it. Well, what I always tell them is actually you can do it, but you don't want to do it. And there's nothing wrong with not wanting to do something. I've been there myself. There's a lot of things that I don't want to do. My point is there's a difference between can't and don't want to. So where's your can't and don't want to line going to be? Because when people tell you can't, and I'm not talking about the law, I'm talking about you'll never get into the Minnesota National Guard. You've been in the active Army for 16 years, you'll never be able to do it. And you'll never get promoted to Lieutenant Colonel. Not in our organization. Well, I got into the Minnesota National Guard, and these are Lieutenant Colonel leaves you see on my shoulder. That's the middle finger. Alright, or when I was 29 years old, and we were trying to have another child. We'd already had Matthew, and we wanted to have another child. And we tried and tried and tried. So much so that that act became a chore for a guy. Yeah, a chore. It's like, okay, let's go. 2 years of trying. And no luck. And then found out that I was clinically sterile. That I was the problem. And I asked the doctor, what does clinically sterile mean? He said, well, in order to conceive a child, you usually need about 50 million sperm. And about 30 million of those sperm need to be active. Like not retarded, like your sperm are. No, he didn't say that. 30, that's a lot. And I said, well, what do I got? He said, well, you got about 2 million. And in one test, we got 1 million. And of all of those, less than 1% know how to swim straight. I guess they need more training. So you're not having any more kids. That was the short answer for us. And we said, yeah, whatever. Perseverance. We tried for another year. Another year. No child. No child. And so we finally signed up for in vitro procedure. You know, they didn't have that, 20, 30 years ago. But they got it today, $10,000 a pop. Yeah, and it usually takes about 3 tries. $10,000. That's a lot of money. And we did not have $10,000, let alone $30,000, which is what we thought we would need. But we bit the bullet. We said, we're going to sign up for it. So we filled out the paperwork, sent it off, and Kristen was late. Late. Work with me here. She was late, like within 2 weeks. And about 12 weeks later, we didn't tell anybody, right? We didn't tell you guys before 12 weeks. I came home from an Army school. I was away at an Army school, and I came home during the weekend, and I walked in, and my wife was laying on the couch crying. And I said, oh, God, what happened? And I walked out, she goes, look at the picture. Just look at the picture. Tears streaming down her face, and I thought, oh, you know, we had had a miscarriage a year before. So I went down and looked at the picture, and honestly, my brain, the top of my head kind of came off and spun around and went back down. Because on the piece of paper, there was a penciled circle, and it was drawn on off to the side and said, baby number 1. And then a circle around another baby. Baby number 2. No test, no $10,000. Perseverance. Perseverance. Okay, and we had twins. And as you heard Caitlin say, I'm a twin. Fraternal twin. So my little swimmer's got 2 eggs. Just for the record. Throw that out there. 2 eggs, 2 swimmers. Alright. So that's my story of the middle finger. Cool? Y'all get the middle finger? So when Buford stares you in the face and is giving you a hard time, seek perspective from other people. Seek perspective from knowledge, just reading about things. Alright? Seek perspective. Dig down deep and find that perseverance. Go around, go over, go under, go faster, go slower. Try everything that there can possibly be tried. And you don't stop until they put your cold, dead body in the ground. Perseverance. Personal courage. Just be willing to do what you need to do to get through the day. And then give the middle finger when it comes down to it. Alright? So those are the 4 things I want you to chew on and take with you today. So now, questions. Let's go. I'll just start pulling people out of the crowd. And ask Charlie, ask my family, I'll do it. I'll just pull one guy, I'll say, what's the question? Alright, go ahead.
How many years? What do you do in the army?
What do I do in the Army? I'm a military police officer. Alright, so I'll admit I'm the guy who pulled the guy out of the car and beat him with the nightstick. That is not an authorized way to take care of a traffic stop. Pull him through the window. Alright, so I'm a military police officer. I started out as an enlisted soldier. I did that for 4.5 years. And then I went to Mankato State. Oh, how many Mankato have we got going here? Oh, Minnesota State University, Mankato. Oh, still no hands. Alright. Forget you then. And then I became an officer, and that's what I've been doing ever since, full time. What other questions? That was a softball. Come on. Softball question, yes.
How has your family dealt with your cancer?
How has my family dealt with my cancer? Lots of ups and downs. And I sometimes wonder which is worse, the imagination of what it would be like or actually experiencing it. Because to sit, that's usually the first question, is about family, and nothing gets me going faster than that. Because to look into a person's eyes. My wife looked at me, looked at the doctor when we got the news, because the pictures, I can laugh about the pictures today, but when they put those pictures up and they start rolling through it and you see that the liver, which you need to survive, has all of that stuff in it, and it's growing. And Kristen looked at me and said, our boys aren't going to have a dad. So we have a lot of take a knee moments. Maybe every other day for Kristen and I. The boys are busy being boys. 12-year-olds are going to be 12-year-olds. And I let them be 12-year-olds. Let them run. Let them be kids. But I tell them what's going on. I told them what was going on right after we found out about it. If they're going to be there on the crash landing, they should probably be there at the takeoff, right? And I say that because there's a lot of difference of opinion about what you should tell your kids and what you shouldn't tell your kids. And I won't judge those people, but I will tell you in answer to your question that I believe that if they're going to be there for the crash landing, and they will be, that they had to be on board when we took off and when we're in the air. That answer your your question?
Yeah.
Next. Yes, sir. How does it feel knowing I'm going to die? I honestly, for me, I am not afraid to die. Like, I'm actually a little bit excited about it. I know that sounds weird, but I know I'm going to die. I don't have that option. I mean, we're all going to die, right? Everyone's going to die. All our clocks are ticking. How many of you heard that analogy before? Everyone's clock is ticking, right? For me, I can hear my clock. So like this morning, when I woke up this morning, I opened my eyes and I said, hot dog, another day. And that's what it is every day for me. I wake up, when I go close my eyes at night, I wonder, am I going to wake up tomorrow morning? And then when I open my eyes, I say, all right, I got another day. And the reason I say that is because that I'm excited is because so many people on this globe have been killing each other over the question of where we're headed next and what it takes to get there. How many of you are familiar with that? The history of our world. You know, it's at times it's not very hopeful, and at times it's very hopeful. But I am really interested in seeing what all the fighting and killing has been about. I can't wait to get to the other side to see. This is it? Mankind's been killing themselves. And I'm a soldier, so I know this might sound ironic. But I didn't join the army because I wanted to kill people. I joined the army because I wanted to stop people from killing each other. Now, I know I don't always get a voice in that, but I'm just doing what I can. And so what makes me sad, what gets me upset, is when I think about how unfair it is for my 3 boys. I mean, I would like them to be out of the nest. I'd like them to be graduated from high school. I'd like them to have me for as long as they can, but those are not the options. And the so what for you all is that oftentimes we create our own Bufords because what we'd really like is an option that we don't have. Well, I really want to see my kids graduate from high school. We don't got that option. You got A and B. You're going to die in a month or you're going to die in a year. That's what you got. So your real choice is not whether you're going to live or die. It's how are you going to live every day that you have. So how are you going to live every day? You guys got blindfolds on? You wake up in the morning, time to make the donuts. You know? Or you get up and say, you know what can I do today? What can I do differently today? How can I get motivated? What's not going straight in my life? Are you going to be the person that charges ahead, that perseverance, that going under, going around, going faster, going slower? Or are you just going to mindlessly get through this high school thing and be done with it? And then tomorrow, mindlessly get through the college thing and then be done with it. And then after that, mindlessly get through your marriage and be done with that. Or mindlessly get through raising your kids and then be done with that. And I know I can speak all smart about this because I'm dying now, but that's what death does. And this is the perspective, this is the gift, I think, that the person who's dying can give you all. Where death is the farthest thing from your mind. I'm not telling you should wake up every day and say, you know, I gotta live today like I'm gonna die. I don't even think that's possible. People who say live like you're dying, yeah, okay. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's possible. We go through life with a little bit of denial, and a little bit of denial is good. Alright, it's like the spice on a meal. Denial gets a bad rap. But it's only supposed to be a spice. You're not supposed to clear off your plate and then dump a bottle of denial on it and then eat that for the rest of the day. Alright? Just a little bit of denial is how we get through the day. And then, you know, I told you seek out perspective. That's so that you don't have to eat a whole plate of denial every day. You take that little piece of denial and then you find the perspective of someone like me. Because tomorrow won't be me, I'll be gone. But you'll be able to find the perspective that helps you get through your own Bufords. Does that make sense? I hope so. What else? Come on, let's go. Yeah.
How do you think God has touched you in your life?
How do I think God has touched me? Deep question. Going long, huh? Well, you're asking a question that ultimately gets to the issue of faith and what my faith is, because it's individual for every one of us. How many Christians do we have in this room? All right, quite a few. And that's not surprising in this country where we are mostly Christians. I'm a Christian. But even if I took all the Christians and I broke them up into groups, I'd still have 3 or 4 different types of Christians. Maybe even more than that. And so when you ask me a question about how has God touched me, my faith, not my religion, my faith in the world tells me that God has touched me just by being alive, by giving me the inspiration that He has, not just through the Christian Bible, but through the world's religions, all kind of bumping against each other and moving across life, right? Doing it in a very imperfect way, killing other people in God's name, right? We do it in a messy way, but we're all kind of headed in that direction somewhere, right? Is what I believe. And so, how God has touched me, I believe that just being here, just being given the opportunity to make a difference, not for the whole darn globe, but just one person at a time, maybe starting with my family, maybe starting just with you. One person at a time. That's a Mother Teresa line, by the way. She said, I don't worry about focusing on the whole world. I just focus on one person at a time. And there's a lot of truth to that. So, that's probably the shortest answer I can give to such a deep question. But maybe we can pull some more of those questions out, because it touches on a real sensitive topic when you're dying. I had all sorts of people visiting in the hospital who wanted to make sure that I was saved. So we can talk more about that if you want. Other questions? Yes?
Why did you pick the name Buford for your cancer?
Why did I pick the name Buford? When I was lying in the hospital, right around the time that Buford was made, a Marine colonel that I worked with in the Pentagon called me up and said, you should give that thing a name. And I said, okay, what do you propose? And she said, I like Buford. I said, well, who's Buford? And she said, Buford is my uncle. He's a ornery, 92-year-old man who does all the things that I was just telling you guys about. And Buford it was.
Have you set out to complete any goals or dreams you have?
If I set out to complete any goals or dreams that I have, I love that question, especially for high school students. Because the last time I spoke to a group of high school kids, they asked me a similar question, but they posed it as a bucket list. How many of you heard the bucket list? Okay, so this is great. Did you start a bucket list? I said, yes, I have started a bucket list. I started when I was 19. And that's what I'm telling you guys to do. Don't wait till you're dying to start your bucket list. Start working on it now. Start setting your goals and dreams now. So the direct answer to your question is, I started living my dreams and goals when I was 19. Actually, when I was 18. It might be a little bit much to say that my goal and dream was to join the Army. It wasn't. I joined the Army to get me through college, paid for a lot of the bills that I had at the time. But it was like that question that I had about God's blessing. I was kind of generally headed in that direction. And though that was my goals and dreams, was over in that direction. When I talk to high school kids, sometimes I ask them, what's your goal and dream? I don't know. I think I'll go poop. I don't know. I might go to an outhouse. But I don't know is not an answer. Pick a general direction, not even something specific. Pick a general direction and just kind of play with it a little bit and see what it brings you. For me, I wanted to jump out of planes. So I went and jumped out of planes. And that was so much fun, I wanted to jump out of helicopters. So I went and jumped out of helicopters. And what had started out as let's just join the Army so I can get through college, turned into, this stuff is fun. I can't curse in front of you guys, I just can't do it. Otherwise I'd add in some salt and pepper. This stuff is fun. This is so cool. It's my Osceola version of the dreams and goals. Wow. All right, what else? Yes, in the back there. Say again?
What's the psychological effect of the feeding tube?
The psychological effects of the feeding tube. Very good question. What I found, and you just gotta walk with me on this. You gotta believe me when I tell you this, that I was not hungry. I was not hungry because the feeding tube was providing all the nutrition that I needed. I mean, I normally eat about 2,500 calories a day, and that was providing at least that, if not more. So I found that I wasn't hungry. Psychologically, what I was missing was think about how important a meal is to you. Now, you guys might not have this yet. I think some of you have it. I know that when I was in high school, one of the ways that my friends and I enjoyed each other's company was at lunch. I couldn't wait for lunch. Lunch period was my favorite time of the day. How many of you, is that for you guys? All right? Because you had a hard morning. Oh, hard morning. Come with me on an Army day and I'll show you a hard morning. You've had a hard morning, you're a little tired, and then suddenly you see your friends. And because in class you can't talk. Yeah, I know. Go ahead and laugh. You're not supposed to talk in class. But when you get to lunch, you're free to talk, right? You can let your mouth off its leash, all right, and have a conversation with friends. And I'm assuming that you all don't just randomly sit with each other every day. You sit with your friends, right? And while you're talking, you eat. And so what I was missing was sitting down with my boys, my 3 boys, sitting down with my wife. When we had a birthday party for my sister-in-law, we went to this really nice Italian restaurant. I know Weber is not Italian, but Garofalo is. We got a lot of Italian. My son says, yeah, you're like 1% Italian, Dad. No, I'm a lot more Italian than that. So this really nice Italian restaurant, and I can't eat anything. And the smells are just, right? And I can't touch any of it. So that's, it was hard to be around that. It was really difficult to be around that. And for 4 months on top of it. But it gave me a perspective. So even though it was miserable, I found things to laugh at. You got to find things to laugh about in any hardship. And it's there. You just gotta look for it, and then let it happen. Like one of my favorite things to do. I'm going to digress here a little bit into the humor of dealing with a feeding tube. God, I wish I could curse because it's in the book. I can't do it. You just gotta have to get the book. Yes, you guys just have to buy the book.
Okay, you said something.
Peer pressure. Shut it.
You said something about writing a book. Is that available?
Oh yeah, I'm done. I'm done writing it. I honestly am just kidding. But I did write a book. It'll probably be published in a couple of months here. It takes that much time to get through the mechanics of it. But it's called Tell My Sons. And it's a book I wrote for them. Self-published, my own deal. Talking about all this stuff. Army stories. Plenty of cursing. Alright. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You started the applause. What were you applauding for?
I just figured that, we couldn't, in some such
You got it, buddy. That's exactly what I was after. Something to leave for them so they can read it later on. Yes, sir. Do I regret anything? Well, I regret a lot of shit. Stuff. Regret is a strong word. It depends on how you define regret. If I've been accused of anything in my life, it's that I think about some things too much. But I think what happens if you do reflect a lot, you avoid a lot of the things that you might regret. So like, I've never done drugs. Never. But on the same token, I was never around people who pressured me to do drugs. And you know, a story I like to tell, I always like to try and tell some sort of story. My oldest son was like 11 years old, and we moved to Minnesota. And prior to that, I mean, one of the things that I loved the most was going to a theme park and going on the most wild. I mean, there is a drug that you can take. It's called endorphins, and your brain produces it. All you got to do is find the activity that releases it. And it's awesome. Jump out of airplanes. All right, I don't want to get going on that. But every time I've taken to a theme park, it was like I was murdering him. Literally like I was murdering him. One day I tricked him into getting onto a roller coaster. He thought it was a different ride. I mean, he was 11. I conned him. And as we were going up the steep incline, "You're gonna kill me! What did you do to me?" Tears streaming from his eyes, right? I mean, just horrible. I mean, I really felt like I had traumatized him. That was something that I can't say I regret now, but at the time I thought, I made a horrible mistake. I may have just permanently injured my son. That's how all the way up, damn near screaming before we even started. And that's just to give you a sense of how petrified he was to do this. I mean, sincerely scared out of his wits to go on any ride. The next year, we moved to Minnesota. He went to Valley Fair with his friends at school. And guess what? Every ride in the park, every roller coaster, every scary ride, he did every single one of them without crying. Now, what was the difference? I mean, we laugh about it, but just stop for a second and think about it. Because you all face this environment. I mean, you guys are like you're in the thick of it in high school. You're around constant judgment and constant pressure. I remember when I was in high school, this was an all-boys private Catholic school, and every Wednesday I got, let's go down by the river and have a keg! A keg of beer. Okay? So, incredible peer pressure for him to go on those rides, and he did it. He did it without crying. He had an absolute blast. He goes on all the rides since. Now, obviously, that has a good outcome. But imagine if that same pressure was applied with drugs. And then you try it, and you like it, and you start doing that without any regret. Just like my son goes on all the rides now without ever having to worry if he's doing any harm. The same thing happens with drugs. And so I say that a little bit because I don't want to judge those people who have done drugs. I was not put under that pressure. Just like people say to me, I don't know what I would do if I got cancer. Well, I don't know what I would do if I had the kind of peer pressure that some of you face as high school students when it comes to drugs or alcohol. And we're talking about drugs. For some of you, that's the easy decision. Absolutely not. But alcohol is a drug too. And I'm not going to get all preachy about alcohol, but I'll tell you the same thing applies. Just one more drink, it won't hurt. Life changed. Life changed. Just like that. In Iraq, they had a phrase for that. Wrong place, wrong time. Because I won't stand up here and say that I didn't do the same thing. When I was in college, I had drink, and I got behind the wheel. I don't know if I was drunk. I didn't have a little breathalyzer, but I knew I wasn't supposed to be drinking. So I'm not a hypocrite. I'll tell you that I've done it. And I got lucky. Again, all I'm offering is a perspective on that. Take from it what you will. Next. Yes, sir. Well, in 2007, so I was diagnosed in 2010. In 2007, I nearly bled to death. I was diagnosed with an ulcer, a bleeding ulcer. And I never believed that was an ulcer. But that's what I was diagnosed with. And they fixed me up, and then Excuse me, I'm sorry, my stuff doesn't work the same way anymore. I just gotta get it up. It's like that dog with a bone. All right, got it up. A year later, it happened again. When I say I nearly bled to death, I'm talking like the way that I found out about this was I was at a hotel in Washington, D.C., and I was feeling a little faint, and I went to the front desk and I said, can you just check me in? I'm going to go sit down because I'm not feeling very good. And as I was sitting there, I was feeling like I was going to throw up, and I was like, oh God, here it comes. And I ran for the bathroom, and as I touched the door, a heave of vomit came out, but it wasn't vomit. It was blood. And it was heave after heave after heave after heave. Blood. I felt like I was bleeding out of my mouth. I mean, these were like gushes of blood into my hands, all over. I went to the urinal like I was trying to be careful not to get blood all over everything. I'll just vomit into the urinal. And then at a certain point I stopped. I'm like, I'll just swallow it. I'll put it back in my body. Doesn't work that way. I'm just here to tell you, it doesn't work that way. Because the heart just keeps pushing it out of your body. And the first thought in my head was just stay calm. Don't get your heart beating any faster than it is, because something is loose in the machinery. A hose is busted loose or something. And so I went back to the front desk and I said, ma'am, do I look calm to you as I'm wiping blood? She said, yes, like she was confused. I said, okay, I need you to be calm. I need you to dial 911, and I need you to tell them that I am bleeding to death. Very calm. Are we calm? We're using our inside voice. Dial 911, please, now. She called, and I told them very calmly. I went down, sat down, just relaxed. So that's how bad, just to give you an idea of how bad that was. And why I didn't think it was an ulcer. I'm trying to give you all, I'm not just telling you a scary, cool, funny story. But that's why I didn't believe it was an ulcer. So a year later, the same thing happened. And I had it coming out both ends. It comes out bright red here. It comes out black tar out the X-ray. Black tar. It is not pretty. If you want to know what it looks like, take a pound of coffee and pour it into the toilet. That's what it looks like. Just stir around. I'm trying to be descriptive. Okay, so a year later that happened again. And then I said, okay, first time it's on you. Second time, there's no way. There's something else going on inside of me. And they said, no, people get bleeding ulcers. I said, do they almost bleed to death? Do people with ulcers almost bleed to death? Settle down, calm down, sir. Yes, sometimes it's really bad. So I accepted that diagnosis. I mean, it wasn't just that. I put up quite a stink over a month or two, but I let it go. And then 18 months later, what we found out was that it was cancer all along. So for 3 years, I had it growing inside of me. And I had actually, when I went into the hospital to get checked out before my deployment, I was fine. I was running 3 days a week, 2 miles. I felt a little tired. I did. I felt just a little tired. And I had moved 12 yards of mulch, 12 or 15 yards of mulch. You guys know how much mulch that is? It'd be like fill the stage. All right? I had just moved that week. And the doctor said, we've run some tests on your blood, and I don't know, how many of you know that you keep stores of iron in your femur bones? I was like, so cool. One guy knows. The sleepy guy. Son of a gun. See? Aren't you glad you stayed awake? You keep stores of iron in your femur bones, because your blood has iron in it. So he said the normal store of iron in the blood is a measurement between 100 and 300. It doesn't matter if you know what the measurement is. That's the number that you're supposed to see. I said, well, what's mine? He said, 2. He said, if this was the cliff edge, you've got like 1 foot over the cliff. Because I said, well, what happens when I get to 0? You die. 2. I was running the day before. Fun stuff. What else? didn't get to ask a question. Get back here. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, Director Lieutenant, how old exactly are you?
I am 41. 41 years old. I know, an old fart, right? Who said yes?
No, she said not yet.
You just made the list. What else? He said it too? How are we doing on time? Am I all right? Okay. Keep going. Go, man. Perseverance. You can do it. I could be up here dying. That kid in the green shirt would say, go, man. You can do it. Yes, way back there. Shh. How is my family and I prepared, knowing that I'm facing the end? Well, at first it's really hard. It's real bumpy because, you want to get everything in order. I mean, I made my own funeral arrangements. I have a 10-page Word document where I laid out everything. I stopped just short of doing my own eulogy. I was just going to videotape myself and say, I know why you're all here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming out. Big shout out. Give a hooah, right? I didn't do that. But I don't know that it kind of goes back to that bucket list question. How can you prepare for such a thing? And it's a rhetorical question. I don't mean that there's no way that you can prepare. I thought I was as prepared as you could be. Because remember, as a soldier, I sat my kids down twice before and gave them what we call the what if talk. What if Dad doesn't come back? And I thought I had seriously considered what would happen if I didn't come back during those conversations. But what I realized is that when I got cancer, holy crap, then it was really, really here. It's coming. I mean, and I can't believe that it's been 2 years. But planning, it's been an evolution is what I guess I'll say. Over the past 2 years, it's been an evolution. Have we planned enough? Have we had enough of the discussions? I mean, there's no right answer. I want to leave you with that. There's no right answer to how you should prepare. I feel very grateful that from the time that I talked about the bucket list, you should start at 19. Well, saving money and putting money in insurance, life insurance. Like I know that when I die, my family's going to be taken care of. I don't need to sell 1 million copies of a book for my family to be taken care of. They're ready. We're as ready as an American family can be. And I'm proud of that. Like, this was the point. That's kind of why I did the planning. I'm sorry I got to go, but, that's why you have life insurance. So I made sure that I had good life insurance. But those were decisions I made years ago. As for now, it's, all right, should we talk about this today? Like, the only time that I've had a sit-down discussion with my boys was shortly after the surgery. Well, before the surgery, after the surgery, when I had been given, essentially, at that time, about 4 to 5 months to live. And then, recently, when the chemo failed, because I'm on my 4th different type of chemo. All the chemo has failed up to date. And it is, if we had that slide up, you would see that there's a dark circle inside the tumor, and then there's like a halo around the edge of the tumor. The cancer that I have is incurable. There is no cure for it. There's no cure for any cancer. But there's a difference between having the cancer and not having the cancer. So like there's some people who have breast cancer and they go on certain medications and then their cancer goes into remission. It's called no evidence of disease. By the way, how many people in here have a family member who has cancer? Holy crap. Okay? So, what we call it is not that you're cured of cancer, but that you have no evidence of disease. Well, I've never had no evidence of disease. Stage 4 cancer means that cancer has spread to another organ in the body. It's broken through the chain, so to speak. And when that happens, there's usually, people don't often get much more time. So we've talked about that. Every time we get a new piece of information, at least Kristen and I have a discussion about what it means. And, I'm sure, well, I don't know know how to take that any further. Because we don't really have a plan. I mean, now I'm much more about today. The day before, a week before before I got the notification to deploy to Afghanistan, I had scribbled out a piece of paper, as I frequently do, and I would encourage you all to do. It had a 5-year plan on it. I'd laid out each of the years. This is what I did every once in a while. I'd lay out 5 years, and I would just look into the future, and I'd say, okay, this is how old my kids will be. This is how old I'll be. It'll be time for another Army move. We'll have to move to another location at this time. Right? And I had that slip of paper, and I tore it up after the surgery. I mean, I can't see that far. I cannot even envision being that far out. I'll be happy if I'm here next year, this time. When I look at the statistics for my type of cancer and the medication that I'm on, I don't expect that I'll be here next year. I mean, it's just a harsh reality. And it's so surreal. I mean, I'm up here talking to you guys, and I do feel pain across Buford, across the full extent of them. Part of it has to do with me yanking the tube out last night. But I actually feel better, and the tube in my side, and the way that I digest food differently. But despite any of that, I'm so excited to be here to talk to you guys today. I mean, it's just because I can tell, I can look out into your faces. Some of you are like, I wonder what's for lunch today. But the vast majority of you have this look on your face like, tell me more. And I get that when I talk to high school students in particular. Yeah, I don't know, it's an experiment. It's all an experiment. Just keep trying. Next question. Yes, sir.
When were you deployed to Iraq?
What year?
Yeah, when and where?
Oh, I was deployed in 2005 to 2006. And my job was, I was deployed to Baghdad. And I was assigned as the personal military assistant to the Iraqi Chief of Defense. So the guy that runs their armed forces, all of their armed forces, that's who I was assigned to. How many of you heard of David Petraeus? Wow. Just a handful of people know who David Petraeus is. He's like, how many of you have heard of MacArthur? General MacArthur. All right, so some people, who's the history teacher back there? All right, so at least they know who MacArthur was. Eisenhower? Oh, all right, we got Eisenhower. Okay, Dave Petraeus is a modern-day Eisenhower. Okay, so that's who I work for, and that's who asked me to come work for him in Afghanistan. When I got that call in 2010, it wasn't just a deployment to Afghanistan, it was from General Petraeus. Will you come do for me in Afghanistan what you did in Iraq? So I was like on cloud 9. Eisenhower just called me. Do you want to join my team? Oh, let me think about it. And then cancer 2 weeks later. So I was in 2005 to 2006, 1 year in Iraq. Or as I like to call it, Oz. As in the Wizard of Oz. The land of Oz. Alright, what else? Yes, sir. How did it feel? What? I still didn't hear the second part. Oh, how did it feel when I was promoted to my current rank? Well, they promoted me at a Vikings game in front of 64,000 people, so that's not really a fair question. I felt pretty good. Go Vikings! Take that, Packers. This is a Minnesota boy. Sorry. Go get some cheese, sit in the corner. Alright, I'm sorry, that's not fair. It's not your fault the Packers suck. Alright.
Oh no!
I don't think I'm going to have to worry about the cancer today. The tires are going to roll off my car. Alright, what else? Way in the back there. What crazy act? I actually have one. I do actually have one. I have thought about it. To go to Iraq. To go in Washington, D.C., that Iraqi general that I worked for, he's still my buddy. He calls me his son. I mean, he's given me an Iraqi name. I learned Kurdish when I was over there, which is his native tongue. And, I mean, my family can attest to it. I don't think you would have believed it if you hadn't seen it with your own two eyes. But this guy, I went to visit him in Washington, D.C. when he came for a visit in 2007. So this was 2 years after we had parted ways. And I thought that was just, around the time that I had left, if he put on, a grand feast for me and treated me like a king, at that time called me his son. My name is Shirzad Zabari. That's my name in Kurdish. And I just took it all as just polite, him just being polite. And 2 years later, when he came to the United States to visit, I was assigned to escort him around the United States. He had personally asked for me. And while that was its own experience, I'll fast forward in time to 2009. And I went to visit him again. He came to the United States again. He came to Washington, D.C. I flew out there to see him. I don't think he knew that I was coming. And I was sitting in the hotel lobby waiting for him to come downstairs. And the lobby was filled with Iraqis that are in the Washington, D.C., the Virginia area, that whole area. They were just filled with 50 or 60 people. And they were all there to talk with him, to tell him the business that they had, the favors that they wanted, always a favor to be asked for. And I was sitting over in the corner, and I thought when he gets done with his shake and grin, I'll go say hi to him. Well, he came out of the elevator, and, everyone stood up, so I stood up too, and he looked around the room. He caught eyes with me, and it was like parting the Red Sea. He walked through that group of 50 people. He sent everybody away. And he spent the whole evening with me. Like I was waiting for the black limousines to pull up, and because he's still the Iraqi chief of defense. He's still in that position now. And, sweep him away. No, I'm not doing anything else. I'm staying with Mark. This is in his Kurdish language. I'm not going to do Kurdish. You wouldn't understand that. What, you want to hear some Kurdish? Why? But I say hello?
Yeah.
Salam. It's the same in Arabic, same in many languages. Salam. Chichetke, Chalani, Bashi. Chubashi. Chichetke. How are you? How's everything going? You feeling good? Hawaminya tent means my sleep is coming. That's how you say I'm tired. My sleep is coming. It's a literal translation. Hawaminya tent. Sepjavitmit, Sesedimin, you're on my eyes, you're on my head. All sorts of little phrases. You string them all together, you're speaking Kurdish. The point I wanted to get to, you asked the question about where I want to go. When I got back to my room a couple of days later, he ended up spending the next night with me too. Sent everybody away then. Asked me if I would come. I thought we would have more people. There wasn't. And we had dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Ooh, that was good stuff. And when I got home, I started packing all my stuff because I was coming back to Minnesota. And I found an envelope in the front pouch. And it wasn't my envelope. My backpack was virtually empty. I pulled it out and I opened it up. 100 crisp $100 bills in the envelope. That's $2,000. And what he had done was he said, I want you to come to Kurdistan. There's the plane ticket. So I don't know, part of me still doesn't get how I touched this guy in just 1 year. But that's what I'd like to do, is go visit him in northern Iraq, not southern Iraq. What else? Yes, sir.
What was your first car?
My first car. That's an awesome question. Really. Because you all are spoiled with the cars you guys got today. You know where my car came from? The junkyard. I'm not exaggerating. It came from the junkyard. My grandpa was a mechanic, and he frequented the junkyard, and it wasn't like a car pulled out of the junkyard. It was a body, the tires, an engine, all put Transformer type. It was a 1976 Pontiac Sunbird, 3-speed. 3-speed. Yeah, you're not going on the freeway with that. Unless you want to go like this, it'll drive. It had 4 different tires on it. 4 different tires. One of them had like knobs on it. Like it was meant for a Zamboni. Miniature Zamboni, I don't know. Rusted. I had learned how to park on an incline because I don't know, how many of you here drive a stick? Oh, all right, quite a few. So you know how to jumpstart a car. Yeah, well, I had problems with the starter, with the alternator, with everything in that car. So I learned to park on an incline so that I could get in, take the brake off, roll it, turn the ignition on, and pop the clutch, start the car. That's how I'd start my car. It's a little hard to do in the winter. What else? Yes? Yep.
If you could go fast in time and change anyone or anything, what would you change and why?
Well, I can't, so I wouldn't. And I joke, but I say that I mean, you can't. You just can't. I mean, it's almost like discussing option C when you don't have an option C. But if I could go back and change one thing, it'd have to be something big. You know, it couldn't be like, oh, I'll put gas in my car that time, or put the tires on so I don't go sailing across 4 lanes of traffic. That was fun. God, I don't know. You know, I'm going to have to think about it. You've actually given me a question I got to think about. I don't know, maybe this is skirting the question, but I believe and have long believed that you should think carefully about everything that you're going to do so that you don't end up with things like regrets. And I'm not saying that I did that every single time. I'm just telling you that for all the big things in my life, the things that you would want to change, like you're talking about, I would say that if it's a big thing, you really need to think about it. Really think about it. And not just think about it, but seek perspective. Find other people who've gone through it. Talk to your family. Talk to friends. And then, the most important part, listen. Listen. That's the hardest part. Because all of you probably have no problem doing some of the things that I've talked about doing with perspective, gaining perspective. But the hardest thing to do is actually listen to the perspective. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Oh, Jesus, oh. Right? Okay, what else?
How does it feel to have to give a speech in front of parents and stuff that I'm having to do it and tell them and I could show them every time that what someone else trying to do and just feel
Well, I don't know how they feel about it. I'm fine about it. You guys are all right?
Didn't hear the question.
Oh, the question was, how do I get up and talk about this in front of family? You know, and am I doing a good job explaining it that way? Where I do it, because I have done it more than a couple of times. It gets easier, but it's like anything. It's really like anything that you do in life. The first time you do it, it's really hard. So when I'm using this for cancer or for your own Buford, like people who tell me I can't do it, I really feel like I can't do it. Maybe it's a deep answer to your question, but I think it gets to the bigger issue of the question of at first it's hard to do, and then it gets easier. So like another story, I like to use Matthew as my little guinea pig. When he was 10 years old. He had been playing the guitar for a couple of years, 10 or 11 years old, and we went over to a friend's house, and in their basement, there was a kid playing the guitar, and it was like, I mean, he sounded awesome, and he was 14, and my son went down and watched him play the guitar, and he came back upstairs, and he was like this, like someone had just deflated him, and I said, what's wrong? And he goes, I'll never get like that. I will never get like that. And tears, real tears. And when we got home, I said, come here, I want you to sit down with me. And he sat down, and I gave him a pencil, and I said, write your name. And he gave me that look, and I said, write your name out. So he wrote his name out. I said, now put the pencil in your left hand. Now write your name. And he wrote, again he gave me the look and he wrote his name out. Now one of those was completely legible. He could read his name. He could read what he put down very neatly. The second one looked like Chinese. Now what's the difference between the two of them?
No practice.
Unconsciously, he had been practicing with his right hand. I mean, he didn't sit down every day and say, let me practice writing my name, perfectly legibly. He did it unconsciously. Now, there are some things that we consciously practice every day, but that little thing is what I'm talking about. When I was talking earlier about the little things, grab onto something small, and even though it doesn't change your life, by doing the simple things exceedingly well, you end up being able to do the harder things better. Never easy, but easier. So, talking about it, I believe that talking about it is a good thing to do, even though it's painful. But I think the more you talk about it, the more familiar you get with it. How many of you have heard the saying, familiarity breeds contempt? Okay, not many of you. You know what contempt is? Contempt is like disrespect. Not even going to look at it. I just have complete contempt for that thing. Not even going to acknowledge it. Alright? When you're really familiar with something, like your parents, you end up developing a contempt for them. Whatever, Mom. I'm not eating. I'm not hungry. And they just got done making you a dinner, right? Now, they didn't have to make you dinner, but they did. And you're giving them attitude? Or you give it to your dad the same way, maybe less so in whatever family. But that's contempt. And why are you holding that thing or that person in contempt? Because you're very familiar with it. You've become so familiar with it that you take it for granted. And so I hope y'all get the point. I've kind of taken a circuitous route there, but it gets easier with time. It's a straightforward answer. What else? Yeah.
If someone were to come up to you and said, I had a bad day, would it be easier or harder to listen to them?
Okay, so her question was, if somebody came up to you and said they had a hard day, would it be easier or harder for you to listen? At first, yes. It was harder. I had less patience. But since then, I have learned to say, you know what, you're entitled to have a bad day. Like, people would come up to me at work, and it was almost routine for people to come up to me at work and say, they would say, how are you doing? You look great. And by the way, I've never been told how often I look great until I got cancer. You look great. How come I never heard this before? All I needed to do was get cancer to look good?
Okay.
Step right up. But if you get, people would say, well, I'd say, well, how are you feeling? And they would say, well, I got the flu, but it doesn't compare to what you got. And I go, don't do that to me. Don't put me somewhere else. My Buford is 5'9", or 7'9", and 900 pounds. But you have a Buford too, and you're dealing with that. It's the flu. And frankly, I want to hear about your flu. I want to hear about your misery. How many of you have heard that saying, misery loves company? It really does love company. I mean, how many of you have taken a swig of something really nasty, and if your friend was next to you, said, here, try this. Right? Misery loves company. This tasted horrible. Here, try this. I think it might be poison. Here, drink this. So, there's comfort in sharing the misery. So when people share that with me, you're entitled to have a bad day. Now, people who routinely, they've always got to create some sort of drama and they're complaining about the poop pool that they're in, but they go and swim in it every day. No, I have no patience for those people. You know what? Step out of the pool, then we can talk. Stop jumping into the pool every day. And then we can talk. So I've never had patience for that though, so that's not going to change with cancer. What else? I have drained you guys, haven't I? Alright, I'll go in the back here.
When you could eat, what was the first food that you ate?
Osceola with meatball.
Oh,
put a meatball right there in the lung. Real healthy. Just swallow it whole, shove it through the bullet hole, take my tube and inject a shot of alcohol. Let's take this baby for a run, right? No. No, I never did any of that. A lot of people suggested I do it. Hey, let's shoot some alcohol through the holes and see what happens. Let's not. Hey, maybe you can lay down and we'll pour some beer into the hole. No, we're not going to do that. Yes?
One funny story from high school.
One funny story from high school? Do you remember my earlier story? I honestly. Oh.
Tie up the bad
All right, I actually do. Huh?
Tying up the bad guy.
A what?
Tying up the bad guy. The bully.
That was pretty good. My brother remembers a good one. We had a couple of neighborhood. I grew up in St. Paul. You know, anyone know where the Schmitz Brewery is? Right, just right there. I mean, we didn't live in the brewery. Right there. And there were bullies in the neighborhood. And I think I was a sophomore at the time. And 3 of my friends got together and we became kind of like vigilantes. And we caught this one kid and we brought some rope with us. And we tied him to the fence of a tennis court. You know, they have like fences, like a chain link fence. And we like strung him up like Jesus. And we told him as we put him up there, you know, we had bandanas. I mean, it was ridiculous. And we said, no more bullying. No more bullying or it's going to get worse than this. And, you know, it was the 3 of us. We just idle threats. But he didn't bully anymore. I don't like bullies. I do not like bullies. What else? Yes, right there. Yeah. How did I live without mashed potatoes? Easy. Next question. Mashed potatoes. Where did you grow up? Yeah. Oh, I'm picking her because she had arrows pointed toward her. See? My favorite group to speak to is high school students. But, yeah, don't give yourselves an applause too quick. When I went to college, I went to school to be a teacher. That's what I wanted to do. When I got down there, you know, why are you giving me that look? I really did. I know it would be torture, but the funnest class, or the funnest group of people to talk to, but also the most intimidating. You guys are intimidating. Some of you are just downright brutal. Some of you threw a couple of shots at me. I heard you a little earlier. You know. Yeah, kid with the Adidas sweatshirt on. Yeah. You're taking a beating today, aren't you? But I envisioned that 5-year plan that I had. I envisioned retiring from the Army after 20 years, which I couldn't do. Even though I've done 23 years in the Army, I hadn't done 20 years active duty. So I'm actually still 2 years from retirement. But I planned on finishing out my time as an Army officer and then coming to teach you bums. And, you know, with just a little bit of experience under my belt was the idea. That was my goal. That was my plan. So I've already got it in my blood that that's what I wanted to do. I mean, when I did my student teaching experience, I'll share this with you guys. I had just finished I taught, like, they called me crazy. And I'm talking about the teachers, not the students. I actually had teachers come up to me and say, there's no way you'll be able to sustain this energy. You're giving way too much to the effort. You have way too much passion. You're going to burn out. I mean, they were being polite. You're going to burn out if you maintain this. And I just didn't agree. I would jump up on a desk and give a lecture. I would memorize something from Patrick Henry, now the historian. My man back there. Social studies. That was my, so mostly history, but some economics, some political science. But I would jump up on a desk and I would give a class from on top of the desk. And I would ask all the students to get up on the desk and have the class that way. And just look how different the world looks from standing up on top of your desk. You come in, you sit down. It's all about perspective. That's the lesson. It's the lesson I'm still giving today. But I had just finished up my student teaching experience, and I told the kids, all right, we had just finished a section on the American Civil War. And I said, today we're going to talk about what happens, or what has happened to all of these African Americans that are suddenly free. They were slaves. Several million slaves are now free. So what does that mean? And a boy in the front row blurted out, "Kill the niggers." Yeah, that gasp is what I heard in the classroom. And the kid, immediately, the look on his face said, I think I said the wrong thing. Because I was in the Army at the time. I was an enlisted soldier, I was a paratrooper, very experienced already up to that point. And I said, you get out of my class. You go down to the principal's office and you tell him what you had to do to get kicked out of my class. Because I didn't have problems. I mean, kids were excited to come to my class. And it's no wonder I gave them an adrenaline rush every time they walked in. But 2 days later, on a Friday, I got called into the office. And incidentally, the principal's name, guess what the principal's name was? Not his nickname. His name was Whitey. I can't make this up. This actually happened, I swear to God, southern Minnesota. I go down to the office and the principal is not there. Principal Whitey is not there. And the superintendent wants to speak to me. I walk into the superintendent's office and he says, "Mr. Weber, come on in. Come on over here behind me. Come stand by me." Right? And I'm like, it smells like an ambush. I've been in the Army long enough to know this smells like an ambush. So I go stand by him, and as I walk into the room, I see a woman that I do not know, don't recognize her. I see another teacher that I lovingly refer to as Mrs. Wet Paint, because that's about how interesting she was as a teacher. And then I saw the two students. There was a second student who joined his buddy. He made a comment after the other kid made his. And I walked in and I stood behind Mr. Hinckley. And he said, "I've called you in here because what I want you to do is to reconsider the punishment that you've given these boys." I'd given them an in-school suspension. So that meant that they had to come in on a Saturday, and so did I. I was losing my Saturday too. And I want you to reconsider the punishment that you've given these boys. And I was like, what? Reconsider the punishment? Yeah, because, the language that you use, because what I said was, get the hell out of my classroom. You get the hell out of my classroom, is what I said. And I said, well, first of all, there's a difference between what I said and what they said. And let's separate the two. Punish me, but deal with the kids and me separately. He said, well, we're not going to get into this here and now. Boys, you go ahead and go back to your class. Your suspensions are revoked. This is where I should hear gasps from the teachers. Your suspensions are revoked. Just head back to your class. So they left, and I moved over to the side and looked. His name was Hinckley, Mr. Hinckley. I looked Mr. Hinckley in the eyes, and I said, I don't understand what just happened here. I mean, I was floored by the whole thing, start to finish, from the student to the way the superintendent had handled this. And Mr. Hinckley said, well, your teaching styles are a little bit unorthodox, and, we have a concern about that. And then Miss Wet Paint spoke up and said, you show a lot of energy, and I think that, that kids get confused by that. And I was like, who are you? Why are you here? Why are you even in here? You have nothing to do with this. Teaching style. What does a teaching style have to do with what that kid said? Let's separate the behavior of the kids from my behavior. You want to punish me for something that I've done, then punish me. But let's keep things separate here. Well, that conversation ended shortly thereafter. I went down to my classroom. I was a student teacher, mind you. And I spoke to my host teacher. And he said, I said, something's not right here. Something stinks. And he had no idea. Well, that weekend, I mean, I'm a soldier now at this time. So I got on my horse, grabbed my sword, and I said, we're going to find out what's going on here, because something stinks. Well, here's what I found out about Mr. Hinckley. He was a rehabilitated cocaine user. How you can be a superintendent is beyond me. You have that, right? He was rehabilitated. But the reason that he was on suspension was that he had a DWI. 3 of them.
Oh my gosh.
And let me tell you, when I got that information, I was like, woo! Get the ropes, we're going to lasso hang this guy. Right? DWI, I can work with that information, right? I'm going to get this guy. And then when I found out, I thought, well, what's the hang-up? How does that play into any of this? Is the superintendent in here? Do you guys have a superintendent in here? I love superintendents, really. They're great. But I found out that that woman that I told you about that I didn't recognize, how many of you know how the superintendent gets his position at most counties in the United States? Anyone? No?
School board.
There's a vote. They're elected into that position. By who? The school board.
Got it.
Guess who's the president of the school board? The mother of the kid who said that word. Yep, absolutely serious. I thought, wow. I mean, I honestly, you guys are going all, and I was going, you are going to hang. I was not, you are going to hang. I am going to hang you. Alright, this is information. Information is power. So I went back in there, and I really thought, I did go in there with a little humility. I thought, this guy is going to see reason. I'm just going to kind of lay these cards out, and he'll see reason, and we'll make this all right. So I went in there like I had a suit of armor on with, futon torpedoes, whatever. And I sat down and I said, I'm begging you to just, punish me. I understand that you don't we had the weekend to cool off. Punish me for what you think that I should be punished for, and then give the kids back their suspensions. They need to know that it's unacceptable to say those things. And I'm not talking from a legal perspective I'm talking about life. They say that thing in real life and they're going to get their ass kicked. It's not, and it's just wrong. I could not reason with him. I am the superintendent of the school district. Don't you come in here and tell me, you're a student teacher. Who are you? And I said, okay, I need to make myself more clear. I am not going back into that classroom until you tell those kids what they did was wrong. And oh, by the way, I know why you're having such a problem handling this with objectivity. That's when his face got a little bit red. I said, I know about your DWIs. I know about your history. And I know who the president of the school board is. Oh boy. I thought humility would grip him. It's just the 2 of us here. That's what I told him. It's just the 2 of us here. There's no pride on the line. Nobody's watching us. I'm not going to tell anybody. Just tell those kids what they did was wrong. That's all I'm asking. You get the hell out of my office right now. You're going to finish up your student teaching experience and you're going to be done here. You're going to graduate and you're going to go on and do great things. But you're going to get out of here right now. And I said, absolutely, I will not. I'm not going back in the classroom because you've already told those students who runs the school. You've actually told the teachers who runs the school. I know I'm just a student teacher. I'm just a little peon. But this isn't going to stand. And he reached behind me and opened the door and he said, I've had enough of this. Now you get out of my office now. I stood up from my chair and I pushed my chair in and I said, Mr. Hinckley, you are a coward. And I walked out. That's it. You are fired. You are out of here. The only person to ever get fired is a student teacher from Minnesota State University. Isn't that a bad thing? No? You got some good kids here. You've been raising them right. No, you're right. I mean, if I were a real teacher, I probably wouldn't have been as reckless as I was. I probably wouldn't have called him a coward. but I did, and it felt real good. But I don't want you to walk away thinking that that was the right thing to do, because it was actually the wrong thing to do. I did not, I'm talking as a soldier now, I did not accomplish my mission, right? I had that guy dead to rights. He had done everything wrong. I had done, 90% of it right. I said hell, but that deserved the treatment that I got? No way. And so the smarter thing would have been to act smarter, to gain some allies before I went into the fight with him. Because what ended up happening was that resulted in the largest school board meeting that anyone had ever seen. All the parents were in the school. It was a room like this size, with all the parents. This is in rural Minnesota, southern Minnesota. That's a lot of people. All right? It was huge. And the superintendent stood up and said, I want to make something clear here. We're not here to talk about Mr. Weber and his wrongdoing. And the teacher next to me said, well, what does he think we're here to talk about the school fuel bill? Every one of those parents, and there were students with the parents. And the teacher that was with me said, I've been in this business for 25 years. It's an impressive enough sight to see this many parents energized, but it's even more impressive to see so many angry students standing with their parents. And that was awesome. That was a great feeling. So you asked me who's my favorite group of people to speak to. Now do you understand why it's high school students? Thank you again for allowing me to come speak to you. I know you really didn't have to work hard to allow me to come speak to you. But Caitlin, I want to thank you for inviting me to come. I've been waiting for an invitation for years. And all I needed to do was get cancer. That's what threw me in. Thanks a lot, man. Really. No, I'm just teasing. Thanks for inviting me to come here. And it's been a pleasure speaking to you all today, and I hope you got something out of it.
I think we're all hoping from the bottom of our hearts that he has to deal with that tube for many, many, many years to come. Thank you very much for being the gentleman you are. I raised his hand in victory because I've always thought that the only sport that has it right is wrestling. As soon as someone wins, their hand gets raised. And I believe that this gentleman right here is a winner in life. And his three boys...